All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So good morning again, everyone. My name is Ryan Erickson Coulance. I am a program officer here at the Michelson 20mm Foundation. I started with the foundation about a year and a half ago, and I actually oversaw the launch as well as the administration of our Michelson Spark Grant program. We'll be launching our next round of giving on February 24th. So glad that you all were able to join and learn a little bit about our program. To go through an agenda of what we'll be discussing today here on the call, first I'll give you a sense of what the Michelson 20mm Foundation does in our work. I will then discuss the specifics of our SMART grant program. I'll go through a review of the application process, and I will also be chatting about some differences between phase 3 and then phases 1 and 2. So if there's anyone here on the call that has applied in previous rounds, there are some slight tweaks to the RFP, and I'll go over and kind of outline some of those. I'll also provide an overview of the past awardees, both in phase 1 and in phase 2. Overall, our grant portfolio is 10 organizations between the 2 phases. And then at the end, I will have a question and answer session. At this point, as people are joining the call, you should be automatically muted. If you have questions throughout the presentation, if you want to put those in the chat, feel free to do that. I might not be able to catch them as they come in, but I'll certainly review the chat questions at the end when we get to the Q&A. And then, of course, when we get to the Q&A, you can unmute yourself if you have additional questions. So the Michelson 20mm Foundation is founded and funded by Dr. Gary K. Michelson. He is a retired physician who made his fortune in inventing medical devices and then patenting those inventions. He's one of the most prolific inventors in the history of medicine. He's also a signer of the Giving Pledge, which is a pledge to give away over 50% of your fortune. He has since retired from medicine, and the origins of the Michelson 20mm Foundation really start in textbook affordability. Dr. Michelson was reading a story in a newspaper about a local college here in California where students that received A's and B's in their classes were unable to finish or continue their education solely because of the cost of textbooks. He was moved by that, and so he established a scholarship fund, but then began to think about more sustainable ways in which he can address the textbook affordability issue. But that was the germ of the 20mm Foundation's work. We've since grown to oversee a lot of areas of access, affordability, and success within higher education. Dr. Michelson has also founded some other foundations working in the animal welfare space, as well as in the biosciences. Our foundation primarily has the mission to improve access, affordability, and efficacy in post-secondary education that leads to meaningful careers. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the programs and initiatives that we operate as to how we go about that. So the first is the Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property. And obviously, with how Dr. Michelson made his career and made his fortunes with patents, this is a topic that he is very passionate about. Through this initiative, we bring intellectual property education to entrepreneurs, educators, students. Essentially, Dr. Michelson wants to equip individuals with the knowledge and resources to be able to capitalize on their IP, similar to how he did. We have an interactive e-textbook, which is entitled The Intangible Advantage. We also have an online course that individuals can go through to be educated in and around intellectual property. And then we also have a partnership program where we reach out and form partnerships with various high schools, community colleges, four-year institutions in order to bring intellectual property curriculum to those schools. So be it in the business school or in some of the entrepreneurship programs at community colleges. We provide those educational institutions with those ready-made curriculums, which they can then adapt into whatever suits their needs. Also through the Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property, we assist USC in running a intellectual property course every semester on campus. The next initiative that I'd like to discuss is our Smart Justice Initiative. This is an initiative that sees the intersection of the criminal justice system and the education system. And through our Smart Justice work, we look to impact those that are justice involved and assist them in pursuing educational opportunities. Through that work, we work to support bringing higher education opportunities actually into prisons so that those that are currently incarcerated can have access to these pathways and allow them to be more successful in terms of education, occupation, when they are released. We also do work supporting justice-involved students who aren't incarcerated. So making sure that we're providing opportunities to bridge the gap. And then we also do work to assist in providing pathways to economic opportunities. So looking at policies, looking at initiatives that remove barriers to either occupation pathways or educational pathways for those with a criminal justice record. The third program that I would like to talk about is our impact investing. So through this work, we actually do targeted investments in for-profit ed tech companies. And we're really looking to support the growth of organizations that have an overall equity lens and equity mindset and are looking to assist the higher education field to become more affordable and more equitable for all students. We work with various entrepreneurs, startups who are looking at how they we look at entrepreneurs and startups to see how they impact the post-secondary market as well as future of work. All of our impact investing is very mission-oriented. Most recently, we had a program with Village Capital in and around the future of work. And then lastly, the initiative that I'd like to discuss is our educational access and success. Through that, we look to lower the barriers for all students in terms of accessing post-secondary education and being successful within post-secondary education. I've outlined just a few of the programs that we do to impact that work. The first is textbook affordability, which, as I mentioned, is sort of the how we got our start as an organization. Outside of overseeing this program, the Michelson Spark Grant program, my other role with the foundation is to actually lead our textbook affordability work. We're also looking at the income share agreement market and determining whether or not that's a fit for students and helps them to make higher education a more realistic goal. We do some work around basic student needs assessment and helping institutions to provide basic needs to students and accurately assess what those needs are. And tangential to that, we're doing some work in and around the emergency student aid space, looking to pilot programs that kind of prove out this concept and make it so that students are, one, more aware of the emergency student aid opportunities that occur on campus, as well as aware on the institutional side of what the needs are for the students. I see some questions in the chat in and around this webinar and whether it will be sent out. We'll be releasing a recording of this webinar, and we'll be sending it out to everyone that's on our mailing list, which if you've registered for this webinar, you'll be added to our mailing list. We'll also be posting it on our website. I can look into actually posting the slide deck on there as well. That might just take a little bit longer of a time, but at least this recording will be going out most likely early next week. So to provide an overview of the Spark Grant program, and to talk specifically about this program. So our vision for this program is to introduce a kind of quick grant-making process to fill urgent needs for organizations who are looking to affect change within the educational landscape. We commit to reaching a decision on each application within 15 business days of when it is submitted. And we'll talk a little bit about that process later on. We really want to be a quick infusion of cash for an organization so that they can launch a project, a pilot, a program that they are really passionate about, but maybe just need some funding to get over the hurdle. In terms of the type of work that we fund, and I'll get into the specifics, but past awards have been given in and around policy and research reports, underwriting policy campaigns or initiatives, technical upgrades to systems or programs to assist with increased efficiency, as well as helping them to scale. We will be keeping this round of funding open for a 3-week period. So the RFP will go live on February 24th, and then will remain open until March 16th. However, we will be reviewing applications on an ongoing basis. Some changes to the Spark Grants program for this phase as opposed to previous phases. So this phase, we will only be reviewing proposals from nonprofit organizations. In the past, we have had for-profit organizations apply, and we had that kind of open, and we realized that we just weren't receiving projects and weren't funding projects for-profits, and so we wanted to be a little bit more accurate in terms of how we reflect the work that we're doing. Obviously, if there's a for-profit company that's doing great work in the space, we'd be interested in interacting with them through our impact investing work. In terms of size of cohorts and sort of the applicant pool, for some perspective, last phase in the early fall, we received approximately 75 total proposals. Of that number, we ended up funding 6 grants, and I think we will probably be doing a similar range in terms of funding. We've targeted anywhere from 4 to 6 grants that we are looking to fund this round. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how we evaluate kind of what we're looking at when we look at a proposal. Margot Wright, to answer your question in the chat, can for-profits apply if they are working with a nonprofit fiscal sponsor? Yes, obviously, we'd kind of be interested to learn more about how the nonprofit is involved, what the potential outcomes are. But if it's some sort of collaboration between a nonprofit and a for-profit, and the nonprofit is the fiscal sponsor, yes, they can definitely apply. Similarly with educational institutions, if they are, often they will have foundations or nonprofits on campus that we would direct the funds to for their work. Okay, so moving forward in terms of the evaluation process. So we review proposals within kind of 6 key dimensions of evaluation. Baseline criteria, key target outcome alignment, potential impact of grant, measurability of impact, long-term organizational sustainability, as well as scalability of the project. I'm going to delve into each of these a little bit to discuss what exactly we're looking for and how we evaluate it. So first, in terms of baseline criteria, so our program, the grant ask is up to $25,000. Obviously, you can submit a lower amount than that if you feel like your project is not necessarily, it doesn't need $25,000. We do ask for project-based proposals. So we are not funding overall operating expenses for an organization or funds to continue a program going. What we're really looking for is an inflection point within an organization, a new partnership that has emerged, a new proof of concept or a pilot program. We don't fund things like rent, utilities, server cost, etc. The time frame of that project, typically we're looking to see a project that has a time frame of 6 months to 1 year, where outcomes are occurring within a year of funding being secured. We're really looking to sort of fund projects that just need a little bit of cash to sort of get over the hump and begin to operate. We are definitely okay with our funds being combined with other money. So if you have multiple funders that are funding one project, we're definitely open and willing to contribute to that. I think we would just want to get a clear sense that the other money has either already been secured or it's 90% of the way secured and it's merely a formality. One thing that is okay to use the funding for is staff salaries. So if you have a new project that you want to get up off the ground and you're going to allocate a certain amount of staff time to that work, you can absolutely put that within the proposal that you're submitting. Okay, some questions that have popped up in the chat. We are an entrepreneurial ecosystem organization. Can we apply if we don't directly serve criminal justice / ed tech issues? Yes, definitely, Max. And I'm going to talk a little bit. The next slide actually is kind of our key target outcomes. So the biggest thing that we're looking for is organizations that hit our key target outcomes. Is it possible that all funding would be allocated prior to the March 16th window, depending on the number of submissions on the early end? That's actually a very good question. There is a possibility for that. I think I would definitely encourage organizations to apply on the earlier side of the window if possible. To give some perspective, last round when we had 75 total proposals, I think 50 plus of those came in during the last week. So I would definitely encourage organizations to apply on the early side. That being said, we do have some flexibility, I think. So if there is a project or proposal that we feel is fantastic and absolutely should be funded, regardless of whether or not the funds have been previously expired, I think we have some flexibility to go to our board and make the case that one or two additional grants should be funded. So the next dimension of evaluation is our key target outcomes. And this is really the meat and potatoes of what we are looking to achieve within the Spark Grant program. So we are looking to increase the number of historically underserved learners who are attending post-secondary institutions. We're looking to increase the number of individuals prepared for the 21st century careers. So Max, to your question, and again, I don't know the specifics of your organization or your project, but that key target outcome may be well aligned with your work. We're looking to decrease the cost of higher education for all students, increase a student's persistence within college, decrease the amount of time that it takes for them to complete a degree. And then we're also looking always with an eye towards digital technologies, just because of the work that we do within our impact investing. So if an organization is using technology, that's obviously always of interest to us. I get the question a lot, which is, do we need to hit all of these key target outcomes? And the answer is absolutely not. Obviously, we receive proposals that maybe hit 2 or 3, proposals that maybe only hit 1. I think as long as you're hitting one of our key target outcomes, we are totally fine with that. We may look more favorably if you're hitting multiple of them, but it does not need to be a project that would necessarily hit all 6. Some questions in the chat. Do you only fund new organizations? We are an organization that provides STEAM. Yeah, so we do not just fund new organizations. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the organizations that we funded in our first 2 rounds, and kind of give you a sense of those organizations. If the inflection point is not necessarily existing in the project, yet the key target outcomes are there, would that put us at a disadvantage? I think it might be helpful for us to connect offline, Rosa, so I can learn a little bit more about what you're thinking. So maybe if you want to shoot me an email after this, and I'm going to provide my email information, we can discuss offline. So the next dimension of evaluation is the potential impact of the grant. We really want to get a sense of who are the individuals that are being impacted by this grant? How many are they? What is the ideal case for this impact? On the high end, what do you see your impact numbers being? On the low end, what do you see your impact numbers being? How likely is this project to be successful is always what we're evaluating. And of course, does the organization existing resources and sort of what their proposed budget align with funding, and will it allow them to be successful and have impact? We're also looking at measurability of the impact. So we actually ask organizations to provide metrics to us as to how they're going to measure the impact of the grant and track its success. So we're looking at, are those metrics effective? Is it realistic that you will hit these metrics within that proposed, timeline or proposed impact, and making sure that those are realistic. We're also looking at just the long-term organizational sustainability. So we are looking to, see who is your current team? What does your current leadership structure look like? Who are the people who are going to be working on this project, and why are they the best to sort of lead this project? What organizations have you partnered with in the past? What organizations might you plan on partnering with for this particular project, and what is your history? Just getting a better sense of the business model of your organization. It's always helpful for us, and there's a question about this on the RFP, to learn about your existing resources and your revenue streams. So we ask organizations to provide a breakdown of sort of what their revenue streams are. Nothing very detailed. I don't need to see your whole budget, but essentially we receive X amount through donations, we receive Y amount through grant funding, we receive C amount through earned revenue through selling of products or whatever that may be. We also do ask organizations to provide an overview of grant funding that you have received in the past. Excuse me. However, it is not necessarily, it wouldn't harm your RFP if you haven't received grant funding in the past. We just want to be aware of, if you have, what you've done with that and how you've executed upon it. Question in the chat. Are high school pathway projects accepted if they can demonstrate exposure to post-secondary and 21st century careers, and probably increase interest even if we can't prove success in terms of actual enrollment? Yes, I would say, again, I'd probably want to learn a little bit more about the particular project. So Amber, if you want to shoot me an email after we hop off, we can discuss online and maybe I can learn a little bit more. Obviously, I think it is important for us to be able to track the successful outcomes of a project. So I guess I'd be curious to learn a little bit more about the project. So let's definitely connect offline. Scalability. This is kind of the next dimension that we're looking at in terms of evaluation. So we are looking to see, what is the market size? Is this a pilot program that you anticipate growing and expanding after the initial pilot? What is the ability for this to scale beyond the initial project? So is there the ability to impact not only your institution, let's say you're an educational institution, but how can you share out the success of your project to other educational institutions, be it in other states or within your state. So we're always looking to see how a project can successfully scale, and even after said grant or said project expires. So in terms of our request for proposals, the application will launch, as I mentioned, on February 24th. It will remain open until March 16th. Most of you have probably already been to our website, but you can go to 20mm.org/spark-grants to learn more about our program. You'll see this is kind of a screen grab from the page. There's a button there that says submit a proposal. That is not currently live, so if you click on that, you'll just get a message saying this will be live on the 24th, but it will be live on the 24th, and you can go there to actually submit online. There is currently the RFP on the website. So if you scroll down on that web page, you'll get to a section that will say grant evaluation criteria, and there is a link to a PDF version of the RFP. So if you want to begin to start working on that in advance of the 24th, absolutely feel free to do that. Again, we will be reviewing these on an ongoing basis, so I would definitely encourage people to apply early. When you do submit your RFP, you will receive a copy of it back to you via email. Some organizations that I were talking with in advance had some questions in and around that, so just wanted to clarify. A few updates for this round of funding that we've made to the program and to the RFP process. So again, this would be new information for people who have applied within previous rounds. I already touched on one of these, but one, we've tweaked the program so that it's solely for nonprofits. Two, we've added a question, learning a little bit about some experience that you all have with other funders and learning what their average response time is. And really, we asked that question because we're curious to further test our model and further prove out that these kind of rapid response times for grants are helpful to organizations. We've added some details asking about demographic information of the populations that you serve. So getting a better sense of who are the populations that are going to be impacted. We've also asked for demographic information about staff and leadership of an organization. This is an optional question. However, the goal of this question is to see that the staff and or leadership structure of an organization is kind of accurately reflecting the populations that they serve. Again, this question is optional, and proposals would not be penalized for skipping that question. We're also including a question about CC BY licenses. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Creative Commons is an organization that creates licenses to release products under. CC BY is one of the most open licenses that there is, and essentially would allow a product to be utilized in other capacities, reused, remixed, obviously credit always given to the author. We do a lot of our work in and around open education and open educational resources, and so we ask organizations if their project has some sort of deliverable, let's say a report, or has some sort of end product, would they be willing to have that be released with a CC BY license? We also just want to learn a little bit more about organizations, so asking them what year they were founded, And then also there's a question in and around the sustainability of the project after the grant funding. So if this project is going to be continuing on after the grant funds expire, how exactly will you maintain that if our funds are gone? Question in the chat: will you accept more than one application from the same organization? Yes, definitely we will. I would say, it might be a good idea to reach out to me and say, hey, Ryan, we have these 2 or 3 ideas. What do you think might be the strongest one to submit, just in terms of, efficiency and time on your end? I'm happy to have those conversations. We've also had organizations in the past who, submitted one project and then, in the same round of funding, after they, received our feedback saying we weren't interested in that project, they would submit a separate project kind of based on that feedback. So the grant committee is made up of 3 of our team members here: Phil Kim, who is our president; Myra Limbera, who is our vice president of program and operations; and then myself, who is a program officer. I also have a beard right now, so I look a little bit different than that photo. But we're the people who are sort of overseeing the evaluation. Most of sort of the direct work and due diligence work one-on-one with nonprofits is done by me. So again, happy to be a resource to organizations as they think about applying moving forward. So in terms of the actual evaluation process timeline and sort of operations of things, and there'll be a visual representation of this as well in the next slide, if that's more your style of learning versus just kind of reading all this text. But after a application is submitted, we will do an initial assessment of that application. Our goal is that within about 6 business days, we will let an organization know, yes, we want to move forward and learn more about this proposal, or no, we don't think that it's a good fit. If we do move forward, we will set up a follow-up phone conversation or Zoom conversation with that organization within about that 6 to 10 business day cycle, again, from when they initially submitted their proposal. In advance of that, we'll send the organization questions that we may have to sort of make sure that they're prepared for that meeting. Oftentimes we'll ask for those to be sent back to us kind of written in advance of the call. Last round, as I mentioned, we had about 75 proposals overall. About 25% of those moved forward into the sort of secondary conversation phase. So just to kind of give you all a sense of what our metrics have been looking like in the past. Again, we'll be reaching out to you. So, for and we're all about sort of making sure that we are very quick and very responsive to our nonprofit partners and applicants. So we also ask that you all are sort of quick in responding. If we reach out and say, yes, we'd like to move forward and have a conversation, and we don't get a response within 48 hours, we'll kind of determine that, the organization is ineligible for Spark grants. As I mentioned, we'll be sending y'all questions, and oftentimes we'll be asked for a written response 24 hours before the call, and then kind of the final date is with that 15 business days, you'll be notified of the application submittal. So this is just a visual representation of what exactly I was referring to. Then the last thing I'd like to do before I open it up for the last 15 to 20 minutes is to do an overview of the awards that have been given out, both in phase 1 and phase 2. And hopefully this gives you a sense of the type of projects that we are looking to support as we kind of grow and develop this program. So our first grant was to an organization called Better Make Room. They really hit 2 of our key target outcomes. The first was increasing the number of underserved learners who enrolled in post-secondary opportunities. The second was advancing a nascent digital technology that are relevant to learning outcomes. We funded them to essentially develop an AI texting platform, which would then free up their staff to answer more intricate or detailed questions. They do text messaging, counseling to help students get college applications in. This is a great example of a self-contained project. It was a technical upgrade that occurred that would allow the organization to scale their work. And really they were able to, grow it by a bandwidth of 10. Hildrath Institute for Justice, we funded them to provide a report detailing the barriers and opportunities to access higher education programs in prison from a state perspective. And this report is part of their larger policy push to get a reinstatement of second chance Pell permanently, which is essentially the opportunity for those that are incarcerated to access Pell dollars to pursue higher education. Again, this project was primarily looking at the barriers to accessing state financial aid for those students, but it's all sort of that larger policy initiative. The Common Application is another phase 1 grantee. And really, this project is looking at how the Common App can utilize similar platform and similar work that they do around submitting an application to higher education to the scholarship side of things. So instead of a student or an organization, having to go to multiple different pages, fill out, dozens of different types of scholarship, can a program be developed where, similar to how the Common App does colleges, they submit one application and then maybe a few supplements. So they are working on identifying and developing that program, again, through funding from our Spark Grant. The last phase 1 program that I'd like to discuss is the Education Trust West. They are a California-based organization, and we funded their work in developing a California Digital Financial Aid Awareness Toolkit. Essentially, here in California, there was recent legislation passed that required all high school students to receive information on how to properly complete and submit a FAFSA or a California Dream Act application prior to their graduation. The EdTrust West identified a huge gap where they felt that schools, counselors, educators really needed resources on how to provide that information, best practices. So they did a survey of schools within California, high schools within California, that were doing great work that, maybe within their general jurisdiction, those particular schools had higher FAFSA completion rates than the overall region, and then took what they were doing and provided a toolkit for schools throughout the state. They've partnered with the California Student Aid Commission in distributing the toolkit. And so, the goal is that, this will impact, over 400,000 students through impacting those educators, counselors, principals, etc. Now we'll talk a little bit about some of the phase 2 awardees. The first is U.S. Public Interest Research Group, or PIRG. This is, again, in and around our affordability and particularly textbook affordability work. We funded PIRG to produce a report that analyzes this new automatic billing practices, which textbook publishers refer to as inclusive access. It's sort of their newest tactic to impact the textbook market, where they kind of strike up agreements with organizations and charge students access codes to textbooks. The report, which actually will be released this month, is going to document some of the issues in and around this process. It is going to give tips and resources to institutions as they are looking to enter into these contracts to make sure that they avoid any sort of troubling clauses that may arise, and make sure that, if institutions are entering into these contracts, that, students are at the forefront, and that they're making sure that the focus is on cost saving for students, and getting a better sense of how students will be, potentially impacted by these deals. Hildrath Institute is another phase 2 awardee. They are based in Massachusetts, and they are also developing a report in and around a model of policy recommendations for a statewide zero debt college model. So essentially looking at what proposals can be introduced at the state level, and they're going to be starting in Massachusetts, but the real scalability of this is proving the success in Massachusetts and then scaling out to other states. But proving that state policies can be enacted to essentially eliminate the need for students to enter into debt in order to get a degree. Root and Rebound is another Spark awardee for phase 2. They are a legal advocacy center focused on ending harm around that has been caused by mass incarceration. We funded their education initiative, where they're building a coalition of organizations that are all designed around supporting formerly incarcerated students as they pursue higher education. So the initiative is to increase the amount of diversity on campus, and then also provide a model for policy reform in and around making sure that, again, those that are justice involved have access to higher education. Impact Justice is a great example of a pilot program that we have funded, and sort of one aspect of that pilot program. So they are also an organization that works with justice involved individuals. They're going to be launching, and actually again this month, the first of its kind AmeriCorps program, specifically designed for people who have been involved in the criminal justice system. So they are going to, over a 3-year period, recruit, place, and employ 40 individuals over in Los Angeles, Fresno, Sacramento County. Our funds went to supporting the recruiter for those individuals. So they contracted with an individual to help them do outreach to the community and find who the first 40 of these will be. These individuals, throughout their year of service, will be getting paid. They'll also be working with other young people and young adults who are either currently incarcerated or recently released here in California, to kind of navigate the process of release of what's called an honorable discharge here in California. Wiki Education is another phase 2 awardee. They work through Wikipedia writing assignments. So a professor can contact the program and get involved where, excuse me, they assign their students projects on Wikipedia, updating information, and really this develops out their ability to write in an academic manner. It has technical as well as teamwork skills, and provides them with opportunities as to what future careers and future work would look like. Again, mostly around sort of content mastery as well as improving writing skills. What our funds went towards is launching and updating their student program dashboard. So essentially, our funds helped them to upgrade the platform so that students no longer had to spend a ton of time learning how to play within the sandbox of Wikipedia, learning the features, learning the tools, etc. It streamlined things dramatically, and therefore students were spending much more time on the actual content and assignment of their work. So again, this is an example of how sort of, similar to the Better Make Room grant, our funds went to upgrading a technical interface or a technical platform or a technical dashboard that then allowed an organization to either scale their work or do their work with more efficiency or more success. And then the last organization I'll talk about, and then I open it up for questions, is the RAND Corporation. So we funded the development and publication, excuse me, of an educational guidebook all around how you can develop a high quality college program within a prison setting. So it will be a resource to correctional professionals, higher education institutions, as they're looking to develop these programs and giving them, an outline of what is necessary, what MOUs need to be arranged, and really provide an opportunity for those programs to grow and scale throughout the United States. So that was a lot of me talking for a long period of time. I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have. You can either type them into the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, feel free to do that. Also, if you want to connect offline, my email address is on the screen right now. Ryan@20mm.org, Ryan@20mm.org. So you can definitely feel free to reach out to me there. But yeah, happy to answer any questions. The phase 1 and phase 2 models were nonprofits. So all of those organizations that we funded in phase 1 and phase 2 were nonprofits. During phase 1 and phase 2, we received proposals, and we were open to proposals from for-profit organizations. But in just sort of the work that we funded, we realized that this vehicle was solely funding nonprofits. And we weren't really receiving projects from for-profit organizations that we felt were a good fit for the program. So in order to kind of more accurately reflect the work that we're doing and accurately reflect the opportunity, we decided to only do nonprofit organizations this round. Next question, can any nonprofit apply, or do we need to be invited to apply? No, you do not need to be invited to apply. So any organization that is interested is able to apply. What about universities? Yes, so I mentioned this, I think, a little briefly early on. Universities can definitely apply. We would most likely, oftentimes universities, community colleges, et cetera, have foundations on campus that those funds would be routed through. But yes, educational institutions are definitely, we're open to proposals through them. Funding can apply to both students and faculty. I don't know if I quite understand your question, Sarah. So the impact, I guess, funds can be used to impact faculty or impact students directly. I think we would want to hear a bit about the impact that let's say it's and I'm just throwing an idea out there, but it's a proposal in and around sort of a train the trainer model. We would want to have a better sense of metrics on, okay, you've given this trainer these skills, and now they're going to go out and impact students in X capacity. How many students are they going to impact? How are you going to track the impact of those students that has had on those students, et cetera? I'm not sure if that quite answers your question, Sarah. Again, feel free to connect with me offline, and we can chat more. As an example, if my colleagues has some OER materials and wants to develop more of our project, would that OER be funded as intellectual property? In that specific example, and apologies, I should have mentioned this, and I've included it in some of the communications that we've sent out in the past. we are not looking to fund through our Spark Grant program OER content development. So I guess that would probably just, exclude that particular example that you mentioned, Sarah. But again, happy to further. Okay, thanks. Jackie, I am an independent qualitative analysis. Are individuals able to apply? I think that we would probably, I guess it would depend on the project and sort of what the nonprofit, I would assume that you would be doing some sort of work in terms of, analyzing the work of a nonprofit or multiple nonprofits or a program. I think probably if that is the case, we may, you could certainly apply and just kind of mention, the nonprofit that you would be working with or partnering with in the work. We would maybe fund the nonprofit to, allow your work to occur. But again, if you want to reach out to me on a one-on-one basis, Jackie, feel free to shoot me an email. Someone had sent me a private message. Would you consider an LLC that is trying to create a nonprofit? Maybe I would, want to learn a little bit more. I think we would probably hold off on that until we learn sort of, what is the timeline that the nonprofit is going to be established, where you are in the process, or maybe even until the nonprofit is, established to fund. But again, feel free to shoot me an email. Yes, OER content development is not funded. So we are very interested in learning how OER can scale and how there can be sort of interstate usage of current existing materials. We're really interested as an organization of thinking about, there's so much content that is currently exists, but a lot of it is within, various silos. How can we get those, the content that's been developed in California to be utilized in, let's say, Nebraska, as opposed to Nebraska kind of starting from scratch and developing their own content when some, may already exist in other parts of the state. So that's kind of how we're thinking about OER related work. But yes, to confirm, OER content development solely will not be funded through the Spark Grant program. Okay, it looks like the questions have died down. So I will probably stick on for another minute or two. But otherwise, we can finish about 5 minutes early, which is exciting. Again, feel free to reach out to me via email if you have any questions. The recording of this video will be sent out to everyone who is on our mailing list. If you don't know if you're on our mailing list, you will, you can contact me. But we'll make sure everyone that's on this call gets a copy of this as well. Thank you all very much for your time and enjoy your day.
Thanks.